At Benevolent AI, our mission is to bring the innovation to drug discovery with the use of artificial intelligence and to bring effective medicines to every patient in need. To this end, we developed the leading drug discovery platform called the Benevolent Platform. Our scientists use the platform in our own research and drug discovery programs, and we develop them in-house at Benevolent, or in collaborations with pharmaceutical companies or research groups. Currently, we focus on hard-to-treat and rare diseases in neurology, immunology, oncology, and inflammation. Our platform integrates AI technologies at every step of the drug discovery process, from early-stage discovery to late-stage clinical development. This allows us to improve the costs, the timescales, and the odds of drug development. We divide our platform into 4 key areas, covering the entire drug discovery journey end to end. It all starts with knowledge. This is where we create our data foundations that all other areas rely on. We've built and keep expanding a library of biomedical information composed of over 1 billion relationships between genes, targets, and diseases, proteins, drugs, and pathways, helping us to understand what we know to be true about disease. Here, we're using AI to mine world's biomedical literature for facts that we put into our library. Next, target identification. This is where discovery starts. Using our knowledge library, we try to find the right drug target for a given disease. This phase is very important. Most drug programs in the pharmaceutical R&D fail because an incorrect target is selected. Our AI looks at the data from a lot of different angles at the same time, predicts the underlying mechanisms of disease, and suggests various hypotheses for our scientists to consider and progress to molecular design. So once we have the target that we want to hit to have an effect on disease, in molecular design, our chemists explore the space of possible molecules to design the right one for the job. We're using AI here to help us with optimizing this molecule for a wide range of chemical properties, such as its potency, safety for the patient, and the way it is metabolized by the human organism. Throughout the discovery process, and especially as we get closer to first clinical trials in human, our precision medicine team helps to identify the right patient. AI models help us here to analyze clinical data to identify patient population and subgroups that will benefit from our new drug the most. At the Benevolent AI office in London, we have this message that glows in neon in our lobby, and it says, "Because it matters." Ultimately, we do all of this. We build artificial intelligence, develop our Benevolent platform, and run our drug discovery programs to create new medicines that will improve patients' lives. Since I joined Benevolent as a product designer in January this year, my role has been to advance the design, usability, and utility of the user-facing components of our Benevolent platform. Recently, I've also started growing our product design team, for which we're hiring designers and researchers. So if you'd like to know more, let's chat. Today, I want to share 3 stories from the design trenches at Benevolent AI. Each of these stories highlights a specific challenge of working on an AI platform for drug discovery. And each of the stories has also brought me to revise my previously held beliefs about what good design means in this context. The first story is about complexity of biomedical data. Users of our Benevolent platform are working with a lot of information, data about biological entities, such as drug targets, diseases, mechanisms, compounds, and data about relationships between them. For example, that one gene regulates another gene, or that a family of proteins is known to be implicated in a disease. Many of those pieces of information will often form a coherent picture about one segment of biology in question. But oftentimes we will see contradicting or conflicting evidence. This may be because there is a disagreement in the community about the role of a gene in a given disease, or because a certain experiment, or because in certain experiments, one type of activity can be observed, but under different conditions, we would see another type of activity. Biology is incredibly complex and still not well understood. There are many gaps in our understanding of biology. Blank areas on our map could either mean lack of activity or lack of information about activity, presence of activity, lack of information about activity, lack of information about the lack of activity. All these things are incredibly important from the perspective of a drug discovery user when it comes to selecting the right target. Finally, remember that on top of all this, we're deploying an AI system that makes predictions and recommendations. Our users should know what data is used by the models, how it is used, and what are the limitations of the predictions. So how do we go about this on the design side of things? First of all, we show everything. When our scientists browse various targets on the Benevolent platform in the search of the right one to drug, they go through a lot of data. In one product, in target identification alone, we show about 70 pieces of biological evidence, each containing between 1 and hundreds of individual data points. We show things that we know about, but this also things that we don't know about. And this may seem a bit unorthodox. Adding cards that do not bring net informational value may seem a bit unnecessary or visual clutter. But in the context of biology, lack of data is information in itself. It tells us whether anyone has ever measured a certain property. We leave it to the user to interpret the facts themselves. Secondly, we generate summaries of facts. Users of the Benevolent platform deal with a lot of complex information, so we try to come up with ways to make it simpler for them to process. In target identification, for instance, we aggregate multiple related facts into higher-level statements that make it easier for users to decide. These higher-level statements would summarize everything we know, for example, about the safety of a given drug target. Individual facts could be information about the target, such as whether it's essential for health, whether it is involved in many biological processes, or if it has been associated with any known disease. And in this case, the summary would try to estimate how safe it is in general to drug the target. But sometimes that's still not enough. Our users rely on summaries to help them decide quickly, but for more tricky cases, they need to investigate even deeper. They need to understand how the summary was calculated, which parameters were used, which not, and how they were interpreted. For that, we design ways of explaining relevant summaries so that their logic is exposed in as much detail as it is reasonable to do so. All these design decisions are geared towards one objective: to give our users enough confidence in their decision-making. This quote from my colleague, a drug discoverer at Benevolent, sums up this need perfectly. In biology, there will always be uncertainty about information, gaps in knowledge, misclassifications, plain data errors. But if there is the right volume of evidence, confidence will start emerging. Confidence is actually a much larger topic in the world of AI. You may have heard of explainable AI before. An AI system may often appear as a black box, even for expert users, because it can be unclear what exactly happens on the journey from the input to the output. There are many AI applications where explainability may be a desired quality, for example, in justice, defense, or financial services. Explaining some aspects of pre-trained artificial intelligence systems where we deal with known parameters can help us identify mistakes in classification. In some high-stakes situations, this may actually prevent tragedies from happening. But that's not necessarily the case in drug discovery. My second story is about situations when not everything about AI needs to be explained. In the context of the Benevolent platform, keeping our users blind to some information about how our AI systems work can be actually beneficial. Let me explain that. Earlier this month, my colleague, Alix Lacoste, Vice President of Data Science at Benevolent, published a great article in Stat News. Alix argues that we need human experts work hand in hand with AI systems to complement each other, and through that, help AI learn. And that learning is important, especially in the drug discovery space, where we deal not only with parameters that we know of, but as you've already seen, also with many unknowns. Okay, so how does it translate to specific design choices? In target identification, we use AI and machine learning models to predict potential drug targets for a given disease. This prediction process is data-driven, and the output lists suggestions that are ranked based on some internal scores. That's a ranked order that we could use when presenting target predictions to our users for analysis. And that would be a fairly standard thing to do. We're all used to exploring lists of results organized by some notion of relevance. Think about search engines, feeds in social media, or online shopping. But we're not doing this. We design our platform to present target predictions in ways that are independent from the logic in which they were predicted. For lists that are sequential, we find alternative ordering principles that bring value to the users. For example, alphabetical order, or ordering based on a known biological property. We also removed any annotation related to the prediction ranking. One of the reasons we do this is to reduce bias. We don't want any type of AI confidence, ranking, scoring, or explanation of its logic to guide our users in the evaluation of drug target predictions. Scientists must be the sole owners of the decision-making process. They should make unbiased decisions informed by their own understanding of biology. And as we compare scientists' decisions with the original AI predictions, we enable AI to learn from the experts. By minimizing biases in human feedback, we can help AI improve, better navigate the complexities of biology, and ultimately discover new medicines for patients in need. Now, there are also ways to present AI predictions in non-sequential manners, where any ranked order is simply not applicable. But that's a long story that I'd love to tell another time. Before we go to the third story, let me ask you a quick question. Raise your hand if you ever had to recruit people for user research projects. Okay. A handful. Well, more than that. Thank you. So at Benevolent AI, our users are all internal. They are drug discoverers, bioinformaticians, medicinal chemists, and chemoinformaticians working on our own drug research programs. Those of you who raised their hands will know, and the others need to trust me on this, when I say that from the product perspective, having internal users is a luxury. We have that luxury in Benevolent AI. Our users sit within the arm's reach, are always available for a chat, and fully committed to building the product. But there is also a paradox in having users this close. Let me unwrap this. In many products and user experiences, especially those complex ones built for experts, users need some level of explanation and training to be able to exploit the product and its functionality to its fullest potential. That is also the case at Benevolent. Our scientist users receive guidance, training, and support from the product and engineering teams to help them make the most of our AI tools. Because we use artificial intelligence to find new medicines, our life scientists also need to be very close to the science of AI. So they get practical exposure at Benevolent AI to all kinds of tech underpinning what we do, including natural language processing, information retrieval, statistics, and data science. Finally, there is also everyday close collaboration between the users and the product and engineering teams. We attend same company meetings, read same documentation, work together to define roadmaps. But we're talking about designing a product here. So learning has to be a two-way street. Our product team works with the users to understand their needs and to provide the best user experience possible. Things that we try to learn from our users include understanding their scientific workflows or product use cases, attitudes towards AI, and informational needs. Now, here's the paradox. Generally speaking, users' ability to learn new things over time is stable. During any given period of time, whether it's in their first or their fifth year in the company, our scientists are able to learn pretty much the same amount about the product or tech or the science of AI. On the other hand, when it comes to learning from users, the ability of our product team to make novel learnings gradually diminishes over time. Why? Because over time, inescapably, our internal users become familiar with our product, and we can learn less from them. With all this training, exposure to tech, and being part of the team, our users lose their naivety. Naivety is the fresh, unbiased perspective that we need in our users to make sure that the product we're building is intuitive and understandable for current and future user groups. From the perspective of a company that has no external users, this naivety is a precious resource. So is there a way to conserve or spend this user naivety wisely? At Benevolent AI, we've been experimenting with a few approaches. I'd like to share 3 of them with you today, and I'm sure that this is not an isolated problem. So if you have any good ideas, I'd love to learn from you as well. My first approach to do this is to do things in the right order. Research and testing in around any new feature or functionality should happen before we provide training and access to documentation, and that's pretty simple. But unfortunately, getting this order right is not always possible, especially in a dynamic environment where many things happen at once. So my fallback plan is to be tactical about picking the right users to learn from. I need to know them well to do that. Fortunately, at our company, our users are very diverse. They come from various backgrounds, have distinct scientific specializations and expertise, and most importantly, different levels of understanding of our tech. Knowing this helps me maximize our learnings while minimizing users' exposure to new concepts. Lastly, there is also an approach that does not require any involvement from users at all, and these are heuristics. They're broad principles, golden rules, or rules of thumb, and they're helpful in adhering to best industry practices and identifying potential design issues. For example, one of the classic usability heuristics developed by Nielsen and Mollick says, user control and freedom offer users a digital space where backward steps are possible, including undoing and redoing previous actions. And this is a general heuristic. A general heuristic of this kind is broadly applicable to any user interface design and also to ours at Benevolent AI. But because of our unique context in drug discovery and AI, at Benevolent we formulated additional specific heuristics for ourselves to better reflect our own use cases. And these include let users decide, whether it's about uncertainty of evidence or AI predictions. Explain without biasing. Explanations may bring a lot of value as long as they're not introducing bias. Keep data provenance. So users will always want to know who generated the data that they are using, who processed it, when and how. And transparency over simplicity. Aim for simple and elegant interfaces, but not at the expense of clarity and transparency. I believe that these simple heuristics that are rooted in our own context, in your own domain, these heuristics are one of the most valuable things that a designer or a researcher can bring to an interdisciplinary team that they work with. These principles that you define yourself have the right potential not just to fix user interfaces and not just to make teams work faster or ship products better. They also have the potential to keep your focus on those things that here and now matter to you the most. And for myself and 200 of my colleagues at Benevolent AI, the thing that matters the most in all that we do is to bring effective medicines to every patient that needs it. Thank you.